When the games of the past, present, and most likely future, when mechanical skill has and will remain triumphant, movement, it has adopted different forms across the years, across different games, but its objective has stayed the same, making yourself a harder target to hit. The opponent cannot predict where you will be, or if they cannot react to your movement, well, they cannot inflict damage, and in most cases, the less damage you receive, the more likely you are to win. A big part of why Smash Bros. Pros are pros is not because of the combos they can dish out, but how quickly and unpredictably they can move. This movement is not just random movement, however. It's been perfected through hours of practice, often called the neutral game. Players use complex movement mechanics to outmaneuver their opponent, trying to put themselves in better positions and gain the upper hand. Instead of randomly throwing attacks, they have to make sure their position and movement is picture perfect or pixel perfect, because one missed attack can lead to them being KO'd. If they master the reach of their character, as I said, down to the pixel, they win. Unsurprisingly, this isn't limited to just fighting games. FPS games have their own special movement mechanics, from slide cancelling in Call of Duty to Jet's ability in Valorant. Other games feature their own movement mechanics, popular examples being Assassin's Creed and Mirror's Edge. So, was movement always this important? Well, let's take a deep dive and begin with the start of the video gaming industry. Most of the initial games did not have a lot to do with movement, like the ping-pong game, for example. In fact, movement didn't see a place in video games well until games like Pac-Man, where the whole game was centered around getting away from the ghosts. While the game's movement was still rather easy, it was still one of its kind, featuring an evasion kind of movement. It captured the essence of what I had talked about earlier, moving yourself to make yourself a harder target to hit. This idea was only developed further when Konami came out with Contra, a series we all know and love. Nearly all levels had hard-to-beat bosses. You had to evade their attacks, shoot back, rinse and repeat. The greater your evasion skills, the longer you'd survive, the farther you'd progress in the game. You could not improve your aim, or place headshots, or upgrade your guns beyond a certain extent. Movement was simply the only way to victory. Fighting games saw a similar pattern, beginning with Heavyweight Champ back in 1976, the first hand-to-hand combat arcade game, where you could literally put on boxing gloves and make thrusting movements to make your character move. Not quite the controls we're used to when it comes to fighting games now. Well, the game didn't work out, and it wasn't until 1984 that we saw a proper fighting game in Karate Champ, featuring a two-stick combat system which we are more used to now. Since there were no combos, you had to be able to get in, attack, and get out, relying heavily on predicting the opponent's movement and understanding your character's reach. Timing and precise movements were everything, and movement only continued to be an important part of fighting games. However, it wasn't until fighting games made it to competitive scene with Street Fighter II that we saw movement becoming more and more important. For the first time ever, a fighting game featured combos, or rather, they were discovered as glitches and turned into features, becoming the staple of all fighting games. And we all know how things have progressed since. Smash Bros. Melee featured incredibly hard to perform mechanics such as the dash cancel, boost grab, dash dancing, moonwalks, teching, and a whole lot of other special movement mechanics that you simply had to learn and master if you wanted to stand a chance. Movement had set its place in stone as one of the most important skills in all fighting games. FPS games also featured complex movement mechanics, but not to the extent that we saw in fighting games. Most boots-on-the-ground FPS games had the standard movement options: walking, crouching, proning, and jumping. And of course, as always, players found hacky ways to create new techniques. A popular example is the infamous Olaf boost in Counter-Strike, where players jump on top of each other to get new sightlines on the enemy. Since these sightlines don't exist in normal gameplay, most players don't know about them. They're effective because they are unexpected. You're not ready for someone to shoot from that angle, and that few milliseconds of time is enough to get the jump on you and kill you. Well, that will be the focus for the remainder of this video, using movement tricks to gain small advantages over your enemy, tilting the 50-50 slightly in your favor, even if it's just by a small margin. Let's start with one of the most basic movement mechanics, the jump shot. Not particularly useful in Counter-Strike because of the loss of accuracy, but it's an essential tool in most FPS games. And it is exactly what the name says, a jump shot. You jump and shoot instead of standing still. This makes you a harder target to hit, giving you a straight advantage. On top of that, since a player's initial reaction is to go for a body shot, jumping also means that they're more likely to hit your legs or even miss entirely. It's extremely useful against snipers as they have absolutely no chance of landing a headshot if you're jumping around. Now, of course, the obvious problem with this, well, you are moving, you are jumping. That also means that you are missing your shots. Yes, your accuracy does go down with this, but you're expecting your character to move when you jump. You can adjust to that quicker than your opponent can. They're relying on their reflexes to be able to track you as you jump around, which is much harder to do than when you know that you're jumping and they're staying still. A side benefit of this is that you are more likely to land headshots now. Since you are jumping around, your aim naturally moves with the jump and it goes up. And if you're lucky, then one of your bullets may end up being a headshot just because of this vertical movement. Cool. Let's move on to another such technique, although this one's more of a hack or an abuse of, systems in place. It's called the PONG advantage, and I'm sure you've heard of it in some places everywhere. Counter-Strike, Valorant, Call of Duty. It's across FPS games. What is it? Well, imagine this. You're running towards an objective, let's say, on Battlefields or Call of Duty or whatever, and a player jumps around the corner and kills you before you even see him. Well, how does that work? How did he kill you that fast? Well, let's assume he's not cheating, right? So the reason why he killed you so fast is because of ping. Because of ping and latency in online FPS games, there's a bit of a delay in data transfer between a person's actions and that being registered on the server. Because of that ping, every player is kind of in the past, like even by 60 milliseconds, they're living in the past. So when he jumps around the corner, your opponent, when he jumps around the corner, you don't see him immediately. You see him 60 milliseconds after he jumps around the corner. Because of that, he has a 60 millisecond advantage over you. And yeah, you may say 60 milliseconds, that's not a lot of time. Well, let me show you some numbers then. A TTK of a good gun in Call of Duty is 200 milliseconds. Normal human reflex is around 200 milliseconds. So that means you can kill a player in about 400 milliseconds after seeing them. 60 milliseconds compared to 400, that's a significant amount. They're seeing you almost a fifth of a time earlier than you are seeing them, and that is a big advantage. So question comes, how do you counter against this? What are you supposed to do to not be affected by this PONG advantage? Well, you gotta play more aggressive. There's no way that you can beat PONG advantage unless you have an absolute mad lad of a shot. Like if you can land every single headshot, which is not really humanly possible. It's quite hard to beat this, so the best way around it is to do it yourself and play aggressive. There's numerous ways you can implement PONG advantage in your game. In Counter-Strike, this means you don't slow peek, so instead of zooming in, crouch, ADS, and then slightly moving and rounding a corner, instead just walk into a corner and then stop. Similar in Call of Duty, instead of slow peeking a corner, you can use slide canceling or like jump shots, bunny hopping, anything of that sort. Don't sprint out of a corner though, because the sprint out time would lose you any advantage that you gain from the PONG advantage. There's more of these techniques, but since I'm not really a pro, I won't really go too much into detail about them. I would recommend you check out some of the other pro Call of Duty players like Apathy. Average Joe has amazing movement. Huskers has absolutely crazy movement and skill in general. So I'll recommend you guys to them. Towards the end of the video, I just want to say, if you enjoyed this video at any time, if you think any of that was helpful or inspired you to learn more about movement and implement that, leave me a subscribe, leave me a like. I would appreciate that. I will be making more such videos if this gets good reception in the future, so make sure to hit that bell icon so that you're notified whenever I post again. Cool, I think that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and see you guys next video. Bye bye for now.